Hey everybody, thanks a lot. I'm Robert Jones. I'm the global lead for aquaculture at the Nature Conservancy. The Nature Conservancy is one of the world's largest environmental organizations, and aquaculture is actually one of our newest program areas, and I'm glad to be here today sharing some ideas on how we can build confidence in the aquaculture sector, and I'd like to also thank Jamie for inviting me down here to Ecuador to present. For years, there's been a persistent narrative. One that we can either protect the environment or we can develop aquaculture. That somehow both are inherently at odds with one another, and at the same time, we need to work towards a new paradigm, one in which we protect the environment and one in which we protect the environment and aquaculture is able to grow in a way that benefits people and nature. We need to protect the environment, but we also need to allow aquaculture to grow in ways in which it can meet the biggest challenges facing nature and people. And that's one in which we can produce animal protein in the way that's the most efficient as possible, and aquaculture is a pathway towards that. The resource efficiency of aquaculture can help us grow more food with less resources. It takes far less greenhouse gas emissions, land use, or fresh water use to produce a pound of fish through aquaculture than it does a pound of beef or other land animals like pork or chicken. However, aquaculture can't fulfill this environmental and social promise if major challenges aren't addressed. And there's been a lot of progress on this over the last 20 years. To address the major challenges such as habitat, water pollution, and impacts to wild stocks and disease, and also the social challenges associated with aquaculture. But we're going to have to do much more. So for me, building confidence in aquaculture means thinking about a sustainable future where we rethink the places, species, and ways in which we grow our seafood. We're going to have to do things much differently than we've done in the past. Now, on places, take, for example, this extreme example. The places in which we put our aquaculture farms really matters. Too many farms, too close together, and too shallow water with not enough flow, for example, is caused environmental challenges in some places, and have also caused problems for businesses. Now, this is where I think spatial planning and siting for aquaculture before farms enter the water is key towards minimizing negative impacts of aquaculture, but also steering aquaculture into locations in which aquaculture businesses can thrive and the environment is well protected. By doing so, we can result in a well-planned industry which reduces negative impacts around pollution, impacts to wild stocks, and escapes, and we can create an environment in which aquaculture businesses are able to succeed. What's interesting is that countries around the world traditionally struggle in their ability to spatially plan for aquaculture. When surveyed by the FAO, every year after year, aquaculture spatial planning, zoning, and area management approaches tend to be the area in which countries identify as the area where they need the most help. That's why we're working with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the United States on best practices in spatial planning and siting, and our goal is to transfer those techniques around the world to countries that need and want the help. Admittedly, we're in the early stages of this, but we think this is an area that we can make a difference. Rethinking aquaculture and building confidence in the sector also has to do with species. At TNC, we're doing a lot of work on shellfish and seaweed aquaculture, not only because they're low input forms of food production, but also because they have unique physiological properties. For example, shellfish can filter water, seaweed can remove excess nutrients for coastal areas of eutrophication that are suffering from eutrophication. Carefully designed farms can provide habitat benefits for wild fish now that those are missing from the wild. And now there's even some indication that reduced aquaculture can reduce localized climate change impacts of seaweed. So for example, we're working in Belize with traditional fishing communities to introduce seaweed aquaculture into marine protected areas. What's exciting is we're seeing a lot of recruitment of juvenile lobsters around the farm, and we're working on measuring that. And that's something both fishermen and conservationists alike can be excited about. Now, our future is not only going to rely upon shellfish and seaweed, but it's also going to rely upon fish. And a recent study came out showing that as fish species are fast disappearing from the wild, countries such as Africa and Southeast Asia are becoming increasingly nutritionally insecure. And that same paper indicated that marine aquaculture, as currently practiced, isn't improving the nutritional security of these locations, because most of it's destined for a foreign export market. Now, this isn't a problem I previously considered, but maybe there's something we can do to help. So one thing we're doing here is that we're working on a new analysis with Harvard University to identify nutritionally sensitive and sustainable marine aquaculture possibilities in these locations that are suffering from nutritional vulnerability. At the same time, we're piloting on the ground rabbitfish aquaculture in Palau. That location has been impacted by fisheries closures and climate change. Also, the ways in which we produce our seafood are going to have to get better and smarter. And one thing we're really excited about here is the potential for new aquaculture technologies and innovations to meet the triple bottom line of improving environmental performance, social benefit, and profitability in the aquaculture sector. Production methods, of course, we're excited about many of the same things you are. Moving offshore, moving onto land, the development of restorative aquaculture for ecosystem service provision, as we talked about, and new candidate species all have the potential for environmental improvements and to improve the bottom line. At the same time, supply chain innovations, lots to be excited here about as well. Alternative feeds, aquatic animal health, advanced monitoring systems, and genetic and genomic improvements, we're all tracking that very closely, and we think these areas have the potential to reduce negative impacts and also generate returns for investors. Look, our perspective is these needed innovations just aren't happening fast enough. We need to do a better job at developing the capital markets and the philanthropic markets to support these needed innovations. So the first thing we're doing here is to develop some pre-competitive information products for investors and philanthropists so they can get exposed and learn about these sectors for the first time. We're doing that with Encourage Capital in New York. If we're able to work together on the places, species, and ways in which aquaculture can develop, I think aquaculture will have a bright future. Thanks very much.